Thank you very much, Kim. It's yeah, indeed hard to follow that, but this is an exciting topic I want to get your attention on, and there's also some opportunities for engagement. So I will start with a presentation, and then I'll have a call to action as well at the end. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vrushi. I'm a thematic lead at Transparency International. Transparency International, for those of you who don't know it, is the global anti-corruption organization with over 113 chapters around the world. We work for a world free of corruption. And at Transparency International, we have recently come up with a global set of standards on political finance integrity. This is a blueprint for reform that countries can undertake if they want to improve money in politics and the transparency of money in politics. This is a global position, so it represents the only consensus document in the world in the area of money and politics. I will first start by maybe some definitions. So what is political finance? Political finance simply is the revenues and expenditure that political parties, candidates in elections, but also third parties that participate in election campaigns, their revenues and their expenditure. So that includes any donation given by citizens, by companies, sometimes by states, and also the way that this money is spent, everything that goes into a campaign, like posters and ads and all the rest of it. And what is political finance integrity? Well, political finance integrity means doing all of that in a way which is transparent, which is accountable, and which allows voters to exercise meaningful accountability. While money is a necessary part of democracy, we know very well that political parties need money to do all of the things that I mentioned earlier. It can also be the original sin of the democratic process. And why is it? Why is it the original sin of the democratic process? Well, it's because it's an entry point for money, for vested interests, to exercise opaque, undue, sometimes illegal influence on decision-making, on politics. And it results in things like policy capture or state capture, which basically is a situation in which decisions are being made, legislation is being passed, not in the common interest, but in the interest of those who donate, those who lobby, those who finance political parties, campaigns, candidates, and so on. So there is no question that we need money to run democracy, but how much of it we need, how it's being spent, how it's being donated, and so on, these are all questions that we need to answer, and we have an answer for that with this political finance integrity standard. Our vision is for a world in which every voter knows who funds their political parties. And maybe I throw it back to the room now. How many of you voted in the last election in your country? Almost everyone. I mean, it's a democracy forum. It would be a shame if you didn't vote. How many of you think that you more or less know who funds the political party that you voted for? Looks about 30% to me, like just eyeballing it. And that's kind of correct also if we look at statistics. If we look at, for example, International IDEA, that you had a presentation yesterday, we can see that only about a third of countries in the world make their political parties report on the money that they're spending, on the donations that they're receiving, on who funds them. About a third of countries in the world still allow anonymous donations, and this is only the legal framework. If you go and look into the implementation, it gets even worse. And then if we go even more granular and see, are they reported in a timely manner? Most of the times they're not. You know, there is no point in transparency really if the donors are only known 3 or 4 years after the election. At that point, it's too late to exercise any real accountability. So this is why we need global standards. We need global standards as a sort of minimum blueprint to move forward on this issue. it's also because corruption and money in politics is a transnational issue. And we're only as strong as the weakest link. Why now? Well, other than no time like the present, 2024 is the largest year ever in history. And political finance transparency, political finance integrity in general is always seen as the weakest link by experts of electoral accountability. But there's also new things like online campaigning, donating through blockchain, all of these new trends that make it really relevant and important now. We talked about AI, deep fakes earlier, how some of these technologies are also funded goes into it. And maybe very briefly, I'll tell you a little bit how we came up with this global consensus. So we as Transparency International have been working on this topic for decades. We have a lot of experience also as election observers on the ground. But in addition to that, we decided to conduct a series of regional and global consultations. So we had one in MENA, Latin America, Africa. We did one in Europe. I hope I said 5 regions because we did 5 of them. And then we did a global also consultation where we spoke to African Union, OECD, European Union, and other stakeholders. So, and then we validated this across the 113 country offices that we have around the world. But so what did all of these stakeholders and experts agree on? I will blitz through this because I know I don't have that much time. It can be summarized in 6 principles, and these are the 6 sort of like core elements that any good, strong political finance integrity regime should have. So first of all is transparency. That means asking parties to keep records, but also report, to disclose and to publish them. Clean money in elections means that political parties have a responsibility to know their donors. Breaches of political finance integrity should be criminalized where they're not. Third parties should be regulated, where in the majority of countries around the world they're not. Foreign and anonymous donations should be at least restricted, if not banned. And we really need to get a grip on online campaigns and fundraising. And it's also great to have so many colleagues from the tech sector here. Leveling the playing field means that we need to restrict donations and spending, just so it doesn't become an arms race of who can outspend the competitor. Restricting self-funding, often billionaires can fund their own campaigns and enter politics even though they don't have anything really more to add than their resources. Public funding should be done in such a way that it lifts up those who need it the most, and we need to look at internal party governance because they're key stakeholders. Gender equality is a key, and I cannot emphasize how important this is for political finance integrity, because when you get it wrong, you can undermine the participation of women and other marginalized groups. We need to have financial measures, but also non-financial measures which support women and other marginalized groups to participate in politics. And this can, among other ways, be done through gender disaggregated information on spending, on donations, and so on. State neutrality is the 5th principle that we highlight, and this means that state resources should not be used for the benefit of the party in power, for the incumbent. There should be prohibitions on the use of state resources. On things that there need to be exemptions, at least they need to be declared or reimbursed. Authorities need to be empowered to monitor such abuses and to sanction them. And it's really critical to have neutrality of police and armed forces, because then we end up in things like repression of opposition and activists. And of course, neutrality of state media. And finally, and this ties everything together, accountability. We need an effective oversight agency, empowered. We need interagency cooperation between all of those that are in charge of regulating this topic. Sanctions and enforcement, of course, are critical, and participation of society. So these are the 6 principles, but how can we disseminate these standards? And I'll end here, and maybe also with a call to action. At the UN level, first of all, we're working really hard to have the first ever UN resolution on political finance transparency. We will do this at the next Conference of States Parties in Qatar, in Doha. Regional instruments such as the European Union, Anti-Corruption Directive, or African Union, Organization of American States, domestic legislation. If anyone in this room, is interested in this, please do approach me. And finally, international election observation. I would highlight especially the international UN level, since we have a bit of a momentum until the Conference of States Parties of the UNCAC in Doha next year. So if anyone wants to talk more about this, please find me today or tomorrow in the corridors. I'd be very happy to discuss it. So thank you very much.